It's our stories. Welcome to a world where real stories sounds like a movie script.
Have you ever felt hatred boiling up inside you? Not just anger, but a cold, calculated desire to wipe someone out? My boss thought I was just another office pawn he could wipe his feet on and throw away. He was wrong. I didn't just get revenge. I methodically, step by step, destroyed every aspect of his life until nothing remained of his ego but ashes. And you know what? I don't regret a thing. I am recording this because I need someone to know the truth. Not the version you saw on the news, not the sanitized corporate press releases, and definitely not the lies told in the courtroom. I want you to know exactly how a human being gets pushed past the point of no return. They say that the scariest person in the room is the one who sits quietly in the corner, observing everything. I was that person. For 3 years, I was a ghost in the machine of Ethelgard Technologies. I was the head of IT operations, a fancy title that basically meant I held the keys to the digital kingdom. I knew where the bodies were buried because I was the one forced to dig the graves. My boss was a man named Julian. To the public, Julian was a visionary, a tech messiah, under 35, handsome in a jagged, predatory way, always dressed in bespoke suits that cost more than my father made in a year. He graced the covers of business magazines, smiling that shark-like smile, talking about disrupting the industry and building a better future. But behind the glass doors of his penthouse office, Julian was a sadist. I don't use that word lightly. He didn't just like power. He got off on humiliation. I remember the first time I saw his true face. It was a Tuesday. A junior developer, a kid named Marcus, had made a minor coding error. It delayed a deployment by 2 hours. 2 hours. Julian called an all-hands meeting. He dragged Marcus onto the stage in the open plan office. He didn't yell. That would have been better. Instead, Julian spoke in a soft, disappointed voice. He made Marcus calculate, on a whiteboard in front of 50 people, exactly how much money those 2 hours cost the company. "You see, Marcus," Julian had whispered into the microphone, "you are stealing from everyone in this room. You are taking food out of their children's mouths because you are incompetent. Why don't you apologize to them? Beg them for forgiveness." Marcus was crying. A grown man, sobbing in front of his colleagues. Julian just watched, sipping his espresso, his eyes dead and cold like a reptile's. Marcus quit the next day. Julian laughed about it over lunch. Weakness, he called it. I'm trimming the fat. So why did I stay? Why did I endure the 3 a.m. phone calls, the verbal abuse, the constant threat of termination? Because of my mother. Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer around the time I started. The insurance provided by Ethelgard was the platinum tier. It was the only thing keeping her alive. It covered the experimental treatments, the chemo, the private room in the hospice. If I lost this job, I lost the insurance. If I lost the insurance, my mother died. It was that simple. Julian knew this. He smelled desperation like a bloodhound smells fear. He weaponized it. Every time I tried to push back against his insane demands, he would bring it up. Subtle threats. "Alex, are you sure you're committed to this role? I'd hate to see you lose your benefits, especially with your family situation." He owned me. I was his slave, bound by the terrifying fragility of my mother's life. And for 3 years, I ate his dirt. I cleaned up his messes. I deleted the emails he didn't want legal to see. I scrubbed his browser history. I set up the encrypted channels he used for side deals I wasn't supposed to ask about. I became his digital janitor. But the end didn't start with a bang. It started with Project Chimera. Chimera was Julian's golden ticket. It was supposed to be an AI-driven market prediction algorithm. Investors had poured $40 million into it based on Julian's charisma alone. The problem was it didn't work. The AI was hallucinating. It was spitting out random numbers. We were 1 week away from the quarterly board meeting. The lead investor, a terrifying man named Mr. Sterling, was flying in to see the live demo. If the demo failed, the funding would stop. The company stock would tank. Julian called me into his office late one night. The city lights were reflecting off the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He never offered me a drink before. "Alex," he said, sliding a glass across the mahogany desk. "We have a problem." "The algorithm is broken, Julian," I said, tired to my bones. "We need to delay the demo. Tell Sterling we need another month." Julian laughed, a dry, humorless bark. "There is no next month. Sterling pulls the plug on Friday if he doesn't see results. And if the plug is pulled, the company goes under. No more salaries, no more benefits." He let the word hang in the air. Benefits. My mother. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, though I already felt the sickness rising in my throat. "Fake it," Julian said. He looked me straight in the eye. No shame, no hesitation. "Build a simulation, hard-code the results, make it look like the AI is predicting the market live, but just feed it predetermined successful data. We just need to get through the meeting. We'll fix the code later." "That's fraud, Julian. That's federal prison time if we get caught." He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning close to my ear. I can smell the expensive cologne and the alcohol. "Alex, think about your mother. The new treatment starts next week, right? $50,000 a shot? You walk out that door, she's kicked out of the hospital by noon tomorrow. Do it. Fix the demo, or you're fired right now." I looked at his face. He wasn't bluffing. He held my mother's life in his hands like a bargaining chip. I did it. God help me, I did it. I spent 3 sleepless nights building a fake interface. It looked real. It acted real. But it was a lie, a hollow shell designed to trick billionaires. The meeting day arrived. The boardroom was tense. Mr. Sterling sat at the head of the table, flanked by lawyers. Julian stood at the front, confident, glowing. He signaled me to start the demo. I ran the script. The screens lit up. The AI predicted the market trends perfectly. The room erupted in applause. Sterling looked impressed. He shook Julian's hand. "Incredible work, Julian. You've just secured your Series B funding." Julian beamed. He looked at me, gave a tiny nod. We had survived. Or so I thought. 2 weeks later, on a Friday afternoon, I was summoned to the HR office. I walked in expecting a bonus or maybe a thank you for saving his empire. Instead, I found the HR director, a woman named Sarah who couldn't look me in the eye, and 2 large security guards. And Julian. Julian was sitting there, looking somber, shaking his head. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Alex," Julian said, his voice dripping with fake sorrow, "we've conducted an internal audit. We found evidence that you falsified the data for the Chimera demo without authorization." The room spun. My knees almost gave out. "What? Julian, you told me to. You forced me to." "Excuse me?" Julian's voice turned sharp. "That is a serious accusation. Do you have proof? An email? A text message? A recording?" I froze. I didn't. He had given the order verbally, late at night, in his office. No paper trail. He had set me up. I didn't think so, Julian smirked, turning to Sarah. This is exactly what I mean. He went rogue to try and secure his performance bonus. He put this entire company at risk. I want him terminated immediately. For cause. Gross misconduct. Julian, please, I begged. It was pathetic, but I was desperate. My mom, you know about my mom. Please don't do this. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. He leaned in close so only I could hear. You're a loose end, Alex. I can't have anyone knowing the demo was fake. If I fire you and blame it all on you, I'm in the clear. It's nothing personal, it's just business. Then he looked at the guards. Get this trash out of my building. I was escorted out like a criminal. People I had worked with for 3 years stared at me. I was stripped of my badge, my laptop, my dignity. I stood on the sidewalk, holding a cardboard box with a potted plant and a stapler, while the rain started to fall. I felt numb. But the real blow came 3 days later. Without the insurance, the hospice transfer was immediate. The stress, the move, the lack of immediate care, it was too much for her frail body. My mother passed away within a week of my firing. She died in a crowded, underfunded state ward, in pain, holding my hand. I remember standing at her grave. It was a gray, miserable day. I had no job, no money. My reputation in the industry was destroyed. Julian had blacklisted me, spreading rumors that I was a fraudster. I had nothing left. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from LinkedIn. Julian has posted a new update. Thrilled to announce our new funding. Success is about integrity and hard work. Proud of my team. The photo showed him popping champagne on a yacht. Something inside me broke. It wasn't a snap. It was a complete structural collapse of my morality. The grief didn't disappear, but it crystallized into something else. Something cold. Something sharp. I didn't want to sue him. A lawsuit would take years, and he had armies of lawyers. I didn't want to punch him. That was too easy. I wanted to dismantle him. I wanted to take his life apart piece by piece, screw by screw, until he was left with nothing but the ashes of his ego. He made one critical mistake, though, one fatal error that arrogance always blinds you to. He fired the head of IT. He took my laptop. He took my badge. But he forgot that I built the system. I wrote the code. I laid the cables. And I knew about the ghost door, a backdoor administrator account I had created years ago for emergency remote maintenance. It was hidden deep in the kernel of the server, masked as a printer driver, undetectable unless you knew exactly where to look. And Julian? Julian didn't know code from hieroglyphics. I went back to my dark, empty apartment. I sat down at my personal rig. The screens glowed blue in the darkness. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Okay, Julian, I whispered to the empty room. You want to play business? Let's play. I initiated the connection. Access granted. I was in. The command prompt blinked at me, a steady, rhythmic pulse. To anyone else, it was just text on a screen. To me, it was the heartbeat of the beast I was about to slaughter. The first few hours were methodical. I felt like a coroner performing an autopsy on a living patient. I bypassed the firewalls I had built myself. I slipped past the intrusion detection systems because I knew exactly the interval rates they scanned the network. I was a ghost haunting the hallways of Aethelgard Technologies. My first stop was the financial server. I needed leverage. It didn't take long to find the rot. Julian wasn't just faking the AI data, he was embezzling. I found a folder hidden deep within the Miscellaneous Assets directory. It was encrypted, but Julian was lazy. He reused passwords. I tried the same password he used for his Wi-Fi. Winner 1985. Access granted. The folder opened like Pandora's box. Inside were PDFs of bank statements from the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, shell companies with names like Apex Consulting and Visionary Holdings. He was siphoning off investor money, Mr. Sterling's money, and funneling it into his personal accounts. He was buying real estate in Miami, a yacht in the Mediterranean, all while cutting staff bonuses and denying raises. But financial crime wasn't enough. People get away with fraud all the time. Lawyers can spin fraud. I needed something visceral, something that would make people despise him, something that would make him radioactive. I navigated to his personal cloud drive. This was risky. If he was online, he might see the file activity. I waited until 3 a.m. I found a folder simply named Personal. Inside there were subfolders, tax returns, medical, and one folder named Trophies. My stomach turned. Trophies? I opened it. The first file was a video. I clicked play. It was low quality, probably recorded on a phone propped up on a desk. It was Julian's office. He was sitting on his leather couch, laughing. Next to him was a woman. I froze. I recognized her. It was Elena Sterling, the wife of Mr. Sterling, the lead investor, the man who held the purse strings of the entire company. In the video, they were drinking champagne. Julian was mocking his husband. "He's such a dinosaur," Julian said on the recording, his arm draped around Elena. "He thinks he's a shark, but he's just a whale waiting to be harpooned. He hands me millions and I take his wife. It's almost too easy." Elena laughed, a cruel tinkling sound. "Don't be mean, darling. His money bought this champagne." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. This was it. This was the nuclear bomb. If Mr. Sterling saw this, he wouldn't just pull funding, he would hunt Julian for sport. But I kept digging. I needed to know the depths of his depravity. There was another subfolder called Audio Logs. Julian loved the sound of his own voice. He used a dictaphone app to record his thoughts like he was the captain of a starship. I clicked on a file dated the day I was fired. Click. Hiss. Julian's voice filled my dark apartment. October 14th. The Alex problem is solved. God, he was pathetic, begging about his sick mother. Please, Julian, the insurance. I almost laughed in his face. Who brings their dying mommy into a business negotiation? It's weak. He's better off gone. And the best part? I saved the company 40 grand in severance pay. I should get a bonus for that. I stopped the recording. I sat there in the silence. The rage that filled me wasn't hot anymore. It was absolute zero. He laughed. He laughed about killing my mother to save $40,000. I didn't scream. I didn't break my keyboard. I simply whispered, "Okay, you want to see weak? I'll show you what a weak man can do." I had the ammo. I had the fraud. I had the affair. I had the recordings. I could have leaked it all right then. I could have sent an email blast to the board, to Sterling, to the press, but that would be too quick. He would just go to jail. I wanted him to suffer first. I wanted him to feel the walls closing in. I wanted him to question his own sanity. I initiated Phase 1, the haunting. I started small, psychological warfare. I still had administrative control over the office's IoT systems, the lights, the thermostat, the digital calendars, the smart locks. Day 1 of the haunting. I waited until Julian was in a meeting with a potential client. I accessed the thermostat in his office. It was set to a comfortable 72 degrees. I cranked it up to 85. I watched through the webcam. Julian started sweating. He loosened his tie. He wiped his forehead. He tried to adjust the thermostat on the wall, but I had locked out the manual controls. He looked confused. He apologized to the client, looking like a sweaty, nervous mess. The client left early. Day 7 of the haunting. I decided to touch his ego. Julian had a digital picture frame on his desk that cycled through photos of him receiving awards. I hacked the feed. I didn't replace the photos with anything scary. I just slightly warped his face in every 5th photo. Just a little. Made his eyes slightly too far apart. Made his chin look weak. I saw him staring at the frame. He rubbed his eyes. He unplugged it and plugged it back in. He looked disturbed. He was starting to doubt his own perception. Day 10. The first contact. It was time to make him paranoid. I created an anonymous email address. I sent him a single email, no subject line. The body of the email contained only one sentence. I know about the Cayman accounts, Julian. I watched the webcam. He opened the email. He froze. He read it again. He looked around the empty office, his eyes darting to the corners of the room. He stood up and closed the blinds. He typed a reply. "Who is this?" I didn't reply. Silence is louder than words. Then I sent a second email to his personal phone, spoofing a member so it looked like it came from the Cayman Bank. Alert. Unauthorized access attempt detected on account number 8842 Alpha. It was a fake alert, but he didn't know that. He went pale. He frantically dialed his banker in Switzerland. I listened to the call through the VoIP system. "Is my money safe?" he hissed into the phone. "I'm getting alerts. Someone is watching me." "Sir, the accounts are secure," the banker assured him. "You sound stressed. Have you been sleeping?" "I don't need sleep, I need security." Julian slammed the phone down. He poured himself a drink. It was 10 a.m. The trap was set. The rat was in the maze. He was tired, paranoid, and making mistakes. It was time to bring in the heavy artillery. It was time to introduce Mr. Sterling to the truth. Day 17. The Trojan Horse. It was time to bring Mr. Sterling into the game. I needed to do this carefully. If I just sent Sterling the sex tape, he might destroy the company immediately, and the collateral damage would hurt the innocent employees. I needed a surgical strike. I used a burner phone and a complex chain of VPNs to send a text message to Sterling's private number. Sender: unknown. Message: Ethelgard is a sinking ship. Check the consulting fees in the Q3 report. Ask Julian about Apex Consulting. He is stealing from you. I didn't mention the affair yet. Money motivates these guys faster than infidelity. I waited. 2 hours later, a black limousine pulled up to the office building. Mr. Sterling got out. He didn't look happy. He stormed past the receptionist and kicked open the door to Julian's office. I had the best seat in the house. "Sterling!" Julian jumped up, spilling his drink. I wasn't expecting you. Is everything okay?" Sterling threw a file onto the desk. "Cut the crap, Julian. Who is Apex Consulting?" Julian's face went white, like a sheet of paper. They are external advisors for the AI project." "Bullshit," Sterling growled. "I had my guys run a background check. Apex Consulting is registered to a P.O. box in the Caymans. The signatory is you. You're funneling my investment into your own pocket." "It's a misunderstanding," Julian stammered, his hands shaking. "It's for tax efficiency. I was going to explain it at the gala." Sterling leaned over the desk, his massive frame casting a shadow over Julian. "You have until the gala. That's 3 days. You will produce a full audit trail showing every cent is accounted for. If $1 is missing, I will bury you. I will sue you into oblivion." Sterling turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "And Julian, you look like hell. Clean yourself up. You're receiving the CEO of the Year award on Friday. Don't embarrass me." Sterling slammed the door. Julian collapsed into his chair. He put his head in his hands and started to hyperventilate. He was trapped. He couldn't produce the audit trail because the money was already spent on the yacht and the lifestyle. He had 3 days before his life imploded. But I wasn't done. The financial ruin was just the appetizer. The main course was the personal destruction. I looked at the calendar. Friday night, the Future Tech Gala. It was a black tie event. The press would be there, the board, the investors, and, most importantly, Elena Sterling. Julian would be on stage accepting an award for being a genius, while secretly knowing he was a fraud. I realized that was the moment. That was the kill zone. I started coding the final payload. I called it Project Icarus. The plan was simple but devastating. The venue for the gala used a cloud-based AV system for the presentations. I knew the vendor. I knew the default admin passwords. They never changed. I was going to hijack the presentation. But before that, I needed to make sure Julian felt safe again. I needed him to walk onto that stage with confidence, so the fall would be that much harder. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton smelled of expensive perfume, old money, and hypocrisy. I stood in the back, near the heavy velvet curtains, holding a glass of sparkling water I didn't intend to drink. I was wearing my funeral suit. It was pressed, sharp, and black as the abyss. No one looked at me. To the waiters, I was a guest. To the guests, I was nobody. Just a shadow in the corner. The room was packed. 500 of the industry's elite. Men in tuxedos discussing stock options, women in gowns that cost more than my mother's life insurance payout. And in the center of it all, sitting at the VIP table, was Julian. He looked resurrected. The paranoia of the last few weeks seemed to have vanished, washed away by the adoration of the crowd. He was laughing, clinking glasses with Mr. Sterling. Sterling looked stern but placated. Julian must have spun him a hell of a lie about the audit. Next to Sterling sat his wife, Elena, looking bored and beautiful, completely unaware that her life was about to end. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. The host, a famous tech journalist, took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor a man who defines vision, A man who looked at the impossible and said, "I can do that." Please welcome the CEO of the Year, Julian Thorne. Applause erupted. It was thunderous. Julian stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the stage. He moved with the grace of a king. He shook the host's hand and took the podium. Behind him, a massive 40-foot LED screen displayed the Ethelgard logo. "Thank you," Julian said, his voice smooth as silk. He paused for effect. "They told me I was crazy. They told me you can't build an empire on dreams alone. But I stand here today to tell you that success isn't about money. It's about integrity. It's about the people you surround yourself with. It's about trust." I almost laughed out loud. Integrity, trust. I pulled my phone from my inner pocket. The screen glowed softly. I was connected to the venue's AV control node. The progress bar for Project Icarus was at 100%. Ready. "We are launching a new future," Julian continued, raising a hand to the screen behind him. "A future where technology serves humanity." I thumbed the button labeled Execute. Enter. A high-pitched screech of audio feedback tore through the room. People covered their ears. Julian flinched, looking annoyed at the sound technician booth. "Apologies," he joked nervously. "Even the future has glitches." Then the massive screen behind him flickered. The logo dissolved into static. The room murmured. The static cleared, but it wasn't the Ethelgard promo video. It was the dashcam footage. The image was grainy, black and white, shot from inside Julian's luxury car. But the audio was crystal clear, amplified by the ballroom's concert-grade speakers. Julian's voice booming through the hall. "God, Sterling is such a fat, gullible cow. I snap my fingers and he writes a check. I can't believe he bought the Chimera pitch. The AI is total vaporware." The silence in the room was instant and absolute. It was a vacuum. 500 people stopped breathing. On stage, Julian froze. He turned slowly to look at the screen, his eyes wide with confusion. "And firing, Alex? Best move I ever made. The guy is a spineless worm. He was crying about his dying mom. Who cares? Business is business. I saved 40 grand. I'm going to use it to upgrade the sound system in the Porsche." A collective gasp swept through the room. I saw people covering their mouths. Julian's face went from confusion to sheer, unadulterated terror. He waved his hands at the tech booth. "Cut it! Cut the feed! It's a deep fake! Turn it off!" But the technicians were locked out. I had encrypted the controls. The screen shifted. Phase 2. The money. High-resolution scans of the bank transfers appeared. From Ethelgard Investor Fund to Apex Consulting, Cayman Islands. Owner, Julian Thorne. The numbers were massive. $2 million, $500,000, $1,200,000. And next to them, photos of what the money bought. The yacht, the villa, the receipts for escort services in Vegas. Mr. Sterling stood up. His chair fell backward with a crash. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was staring at Julian. His face was a mask of purple rage. But I wasn't done. "And now for the finale," I whispered. The screen flickered. Again. Phase 3. The betrayal. The video from the office couch, Julian and Elena Sterling. It wasn't explicit. I didn't need porn to destroy him. It was worse. It was intimate. It was them toasting with champagne. Video Julian, to your husband, the dumbest man in the city. Video Elena, cheers to his money, darling. The audio cut out. The image froze on that frame, Julian and Elena laughing, with the timestamp from just 3 weeks ago. The ballroom exploded. It wasn't applause this time. It was chaos, screams, shouts, flashbulbs popping like strobe lights in a war zone. Elena Sterling covered her face with her clutch and ran for the side exit, sobbing. Mr. Sterling didn't run. He marched toward the stage. He moved like a tank. He climbed the stairs. Julian was backing away, holding the podium for support, looking like a rat trapped in a spotlight. Sir, Mr. Sterling, it's not what it looks like. I can explain. It's AI. It's a hack. Mr. Sterling didn't speak. He reached Julian and delivered a right hook that I felt from the back of the room. It was a sound like a wet branch snapping. Julian crumpled. He went down like a sack of bricks. Security guards rushed the stage, tackling Sterling, trying to separate them. The host was shouting into a dead microphone. People were live streaming on their phones. The CEO of the year was lying on the floor, bleeding from a broken nose, surrounded by the ruins of his life. I stood there for a moment longer. I watched Julian try to crawl away, his tuxedo torn, his face a mask of blood and tears. He looked out into the crowd, desperate for an ally, for someone to help him. His eyes scanned the room. For a split second, through the chaos, his gaze locked on the back corner, on me. I stepped out of the shadows. I raised my glass of sparkling water in a silent toast. Checkmate. I saw the recognition in his eyes. I saw the realization hit him harder than the punch. He knew. I placed the glass on a waiter's tray, turned around, and walked out the double doors. Outside, the night air was cool and crisp. I could hear sirens in the distance, police, probably called by the venue or the investors. They were coming for him. I walked down the steps of the hotel, loosened my tie, and took a deep breath. My mother used to say that hate is a poison that you drink, expecting the other person to die. She was wrong. Sometimes hate is a fuel, and if you refine it properly, if you focus it, it can burn down a fortress. Julian was destroyed, but the story wasn't quite over. I had one last visit to make. The fallout wasn't just a news cycle, it was a demolition. By the time I woke up the next morning, the video had 5 million views. It was trending globally. Hashtag Julian Thorne exposed. Hashtag Ethelgard scam. The police didn't wait. Based on the leaked evidence, which I had anonymously forwarded to the SEC and the FBI hours before the gala, they raided Julian's penthouse. They found his servers, his passports, and enough cocaine to charge him with distribution, though that was the least of his worries. Mr. Sterling sued him for everything he was worth. The board sued him. The employees who lost their pensions when the stock hit zero filed a class action lawsuit. Julian was denied bail. He was deemed a flight risk because of the offshore accounts I had exposed. The trial lasted 6 months. I didn't go. I watched it on TV in a dive bar, sipping cheap beer. Julian looked small in court. He tried to blame everything on me, on the rogue IT guy, but it didn't stick. The audio recordings were his coffin nails. His own voice, dripping with arrogance, admitting to the fraud, sealed his fate. The judge was merciless. Charges: securities fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Sentence: 20 years in federal prison, without parole for at least 15. It was done. The monster was in a cage. But I needed one last thing. I needed him to know why. 1 year later, I drove out to the Federal Correctional Institution. It was a bleak concrete fortress surrounded by razor wire and dead grass. I sat in the visitor's booth. The glass was thick, scratched, and dirty. It smelled of bleach and despair. When the guards brought him in, I almost didn't recognize him. The Italian suits were gone, replaced by a faded orange jumpsuit that was too big for him. His hair, once perfectly styled, was shaved close to his skull. He had lost weight. His eyes were darting around, nervous, twitchy. He looked like a man who had spent the last year looking over his shoulder. He sat down and picked up the phone. He squinted at me through the glass. "Who are you?" he rasped. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. "Hello, Julian," I said calmly. He froze. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead against the glass. Recognition dawned slowly. "Alex? The IT guy?" I corrected him. "Head of operations, or, as you preferred to call me, the Worm." His face twisted. A flash of the old Julian appeared. The anger, the entitlement. You ruined me. You destroyed my life. Do you have any idea what they do to people like me in here? I lost everything." "You lost nothing, Julian," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You threw it away. You built a castle on a swamp and laughed when it sank." "Why?" He slammed his hand against the glass. The guard behind him stepped forward, hand on his baton. Julian flinched and lowered his voice. "Why go this far? Over a job? Over a firing?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small laminated photo. I held it up to the glass. It was my mother. "Because of her," I said. "You forced me to commit a crime to save her, and then you fired me to save $40,000. She died alone in a state ward because you wanted to buy a new sound system for your Porsche." Julian stared at the photo. He looked confused, as if he couldn't process that a human life had value equal to his bank account. "That's it?" he asked, incredulous. "Because your mom died? People die, Alex. That's business." I smiled. It was a sad, tired smile. "And that, Julian, is why you are in there and I am out here. You never understood people. You only understood leverage. Well, I found yours." I stood up. "Wait!" Julian panicked. "Wait, Alex! Can you help me? Send me money? Put some money on my commissary account? Please! I have nobody. Elena won't answer my calls. Sterling wants me dead. I'm begging you." The great Julian Thorne, the visionary, begging the Worm for snack money. "I can't do that, Julian," I said, hanging up the phone. "I'm just a spineless worm. What could I possibly offer a genius like you?" I turned and walked away. I could hear him screaming my name through the glass, muffled and distant, until the heavy metal door slammed shut behind me. I walked out into the sunlight. The air tasted sweet. I work in a library now. It's quiet. The pay is low, but the benefits are decent. I help old people figure out how to use email. I fix the Wi-Fi when it goes down. Nobody yells at me. Nobody threatens me. I visit my mother's grave every Sunday. I planted fresh flowers there last week. Sometimes, late at night, I check the news. Every now and then, I see a story about a tyrannical boss, a CEO mistreating their staff, or a company abusing its power. And I smile, because they forget the most important rule of the jungle. It's not the lion you should be afraid of. The lion roars before it attacks. You know it's coming. No, you should be afraid of the spider sitting quietly in the corner of the web, the one you ignore, the one you think is insignificant. Because by the time you feel the bite, the poison is already in your veins. I am Alex. I was the spider, and the web is always waiting.
Thank you for staying with me until the end. How would you have acted in the protagonist's place? Write your thoughts in the comments. More fresh and controversial stories every day on my profile. Like and subscribe to this channel.